Hey, listeners, welcome back. JD here. And this week, we're doing something special. We're talking to Caroline Oliveira. She is the finance director and development director as well at Sinergia Animal. This is one of the world's top animal charities. What is an animal charity, and why should you, as a Christian who wants to impact the world, care? Well, we'll get into that. We'll get into fundraising careers as well. Caroline spends most of her time fundraising, writing reports, getting information out there for key donors. We talk about that in the second half of the episode. By the way, for this week's episode, I really highly recommend checking out the transcript first because we go all over the place. And if you want to hear more about veganism and why Christians should care about animal charities, I recommend the first half of the episode. If you're interested in how these animal charities work, check out the middle of the episode. And then finally, at the end, if you want to hear about careers in fundraising for any nonprofit, check that out. Caroline shares her background and story. She has a bachelor's in business administration and worked for Nestle and other large food corporations for many years before pivoting to Sinergia Animal, which is one of the highest rated animal charities. Animal Charity Evaluators, the best recommender in this space, puts their cost effectiveness in this way. They estimate that their cage-free corporate campaigns affect 53 hens per dollar. They have an institutional meat reduction program which replaces 3 animal-based meals for every dollar donated. And their pig welfare program affects 21 mother pigs and 354 piglets for every single dollar. So really massively effective numbers, working almost entirely in the global south. And I recommend checking out this episode or sharing it with anybody who's interested in either tackling factory farming or just interested in fundraising careers for a nonprofit. So Caroline, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on. It's a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and to have the opportunity to share a little more about my career and share a little more about Synergia's work.
Yeah, I'm excited. So why don't you take a moment to share a little bit more about yourself, your background, and what it is you do now to improve the world.
Okay. So Caroline, I'm the development director at Sinergia Animal. I've been in the movement and working for Synergia for almost 3 years now. Before that, I came from a corporate career. I have a degree in business administration and I'm specialized in international trade. And I spent many years in my career working for profit and for those stakeholders that we don't know who they are. And at some point when I was working in Nestle, and it's funny, I can bring this up later again, but Nestle is one of our targets in our campaigns today, so I'm in the other side. But when I was there, and I learned about the reality of animals exploited for food, not just in our country, but all over the world, that touched me so deeply. First, because I wasn't aware of, as many people aren't, about the horrors of factory farming, but because there was space for me to do something different that I hadn't done so far. And working for a company and dedicating all my hours and my time and my talent and whatever I had to bring to make that bigger and to contribute to that, to the exploitation of animals was something that I couldn't bear anymore. So that was when I decided that I needed something. I needed a career that was aligned with my values. And there was so much to learn about animal advocacy. And I think as a response to my prayers to have something, a career around something that meant something to me and that could help me affect change in the world was something that came later, but came as a beautiful new mission for me to follow. And that started early in 2022 in Synergia.
Wow. Okay. So you were with Nestle, that massive food conglomerate, massive food company globally, and you have a business background, right? So you were helping them with, was it client management or just customer relations, or what was it you were doing at Nestle?
I did different things, but my last position was to hold the A accounts, like the most important accounts that we had. Back then in customer service. So we took care of them to make sure that they were buying as much as they could and making the best.
So you were working in the food industry. You now work at a top-rated animal charity, Sinergia Animal. And when I think of Synergia Animal, I think of a couple of things. I think of campaigns to help chickens have better conditions on factory farms, moved from cages to cage-free facilities. I also think of pigs and improving the welfare of pigs on farms. But we'll talk more about Synergia Animal in a moment. But walk me through that shift you had, where you went from working in the normal or standard food industry at Nestle to caring about animals to working for a top rated animal charity. Like, was there a moment when you learned about how animals were treated, or was this more of like a gradual process? Kind of walk me through that, how that happened.
It was a gradual process. I think it started when I started learning about the realities, the reality of animals exploited for food. So I remember that I say among my friends that I was never the angry activist, because some people, like when they are like very early in activism, they are very angry
Right, like
and
PETA
like meat.
activists on the street.
Yeah, meat is murder and all of that. I say that I was always the sad activist all the time, because I learned about things and I cried so
Mm,
much about everything. I remember the video that made me vegetarian. I started being vegetarian in 2018. It was a video that my mom shared with me of animals very close. Those were pigs and cows, very close to the moment where they're going to die, and they were crying, and their eyes in a close distance, they're very similar to ours. So
mm.
you look and you see an individual that's condemned to death, and then you think like, why? So it's not like we don't have a choice and we need to eat them and to do that to them. And we've been like way apart from that reality. It's just a matter of our choices and preferences and yeah, cultural roots that go very
So
deep.
was it all in a video that you saw of the the execution, the slaughter of pigs? That was the turning point for you.
That was. I remember that day because I saw that video when I was on my way to work, and I got to Nestle. I was crying. And then, like, from that day at night, I tried to eat like meat. I don't remember precisely what. And it tasted like sand. It just wasn't food anymore. And I tried to chew that, and I was
It
like,
tasted
okay,
like sin. Is that what you said?
yeah, I don't know if that's something that we somehow say in Portuguese. I don't know if that translates well, but it didn't taste like food. It tasted like something that
Yes.
shouldn't be eaten. And then when I tasted that, I was like, this is not for me, and this is wrong. At first, I didn't want to share that with anyone because I didn't fully understand what was going on with me. So is this like I'm shifting this for life? Is this something that I want to be outspoken about, or is this a phase? What's happening?
Right.
What do I believe around this? So I took my time quietly to digest what I was feeling, and then I started learning more and following all those Instagram pages of other amazing organizations doing the work, and some of those
About how animals are
things and
treated. You
videos
were
that I was.
learning more about the conditions on farms and what it would mean to go vegetarian.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I was having this discussion earlier with this a friend, and we are talking about like the end of any animal exploited in the food industry is there. It's premature death. They don't have a chance to live a full life as they could if they were free. So that's something that we know, and some people don't know that that's the reality too for eggs and dairy, but it is. But the thing is, between the moment that they are born and they are condemned to death, there's a whole life of suffering, a
Mm.
short and very intense life of suffering. And learning about those realities and what they do to laying hens, what they do to broilers, what happens to baby calves and baby chicks, male chicks, that's devastating. Like that's something that I know why the industry keeps so silent about that, and why they keep that reality hidden. Many people wouldn't buy it if they knew. So, but we have still that image, especially in our countries. I know that's not anymore that much of a reality in the global north countries, in Europe, in the US. But here, when we talk about animals, people still think a lot of companion animals. So they think of dogs and they think of cats, but they never even remember the animals exploited for food. They don't remember that they are intelligent, that they build bones, that they suffer, they feel, they build connections. They are not considered as beings. They are considered as objects or resources. And
Mm,
that's very sad. So facing all that at once, it was very intense for me. So that's why I say that I was the sad activist. I cried a lot, and everywhere I went, and that's something that's very similar to my experience as a Christian from birth. Like we go to places and we can't avoid speaking out about that.
mm,
So we just go and we start talking. Did you know that this is what happens in a very gentle way? Like I never got to accuse people,
right.
but presenting the facts and the things I was just learning, because those were so new to me as a new advocate, as somebody who was just learning how to care about that. So I used to share that a lot, and I started posting a lot of things that I learned about the cruelty of animal exploitation. And first, I started as a vegetarian in 2018. It's still a challenge for me to
By the way, that's
quit
also the year I
dairy.
went vegetarian, was 2018. So see some of my story in yours, but continue. So you
Oh
were
yeah,
vegetarian, and
really?
then you went vegan later on.
Yeah, it took me a while because combined with those changes in my mindset, and that would lead to changes in my career and then lead to changes in the way I behave, even in my relationships. I was going through like some hard personal moments, and there was not, I wasn't ready to do so much yet. So I went vegetarian first, willing to be vegan, but still I struggled a lot with dairy
Is it
products.
the
It was very
cheese?
hard. It was cheese,
Yeah,
mostly cheese
yeah.
and
That's
other
it for
cheesy
me. Yeah,
products.
yeah.
It was so present in my life. And when I became vegetarian, I became so dependent on that. And that's something that I tell my sister. She's in a similar path now. She's vegetarian, going vegan. She wants to, struggling still to take dairy away from her life. I say that we think of the food that we always ate, and then we think of eliminating everything that has animal products, and then you are like left with a very little amount of food, and you think like, oh, how am I going to live with this that's left? It's so little.
Right.
But the reality is that when you start exploiting other things to eat, you gain a lot of options. You never think of that. You only think, in the beginning at least, of what you lose, and
Mm,
you just like you cut a lot of things, and that's not like real. When you take the courage to
yeah.
leave dairy, you learn a lot of new things to eat. One of these days, and saying how beautiful it is to have a young, like a youth in church, connected to your friends in church, and how fun it is, like singing together and going out and preaching together, and leafletting and doing all of those church activities that you have, and going to church early and going back home, eating fast, going back to church and meeting your friends. You gain so much, and I feel that I wouldn't have had a richer youth age or childhood if I had been brought up in a non-Christian home.
Mm.
So it was,
Yeah,
and
share
it
with me
was
more
the,
about your Christian background. You're raised in a Christian family, and you're in Brazil as well. What's it like being a Christian in Brazil for those of our listeners, mostly in the U.S., UK, who have a different context with society and their faith?
uh, Brazil is technically a neutral country, like if you look at it politically, but in reality, we are a very big Christian country. Mostly Catholic, but evangelic churches are very big here too. And I kid around my friends in Synergia that many expressions that we have in Brazil in Brazilian Portuguese come from religion. So we mention Jesus a lot, and other like we have like a lot of other sayings that come from faith, and that's because we are in a very Christian country.
Oh,
Um,
you mean at Sinergia Animal, you have certain sayings that come from like popular Christian sayings?
yeah, I say I
Are there
don't
any
know
that
if
come
I
to
can.
mind?
remember any. I say misericordia a lot. Misericordia is like mercy. It's like something I
Mm,
say, have mercy. But that's say a lot and you say in a funny way, but it's something that we do a lot in here
exactly.
in
It's
the
like
Northeast.
what
Like
people in the
misericordia.
Bible would plead is to have mercy on me, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then maybe through the conversation I can remember some others, but I always tell my friends like I say a lot of Christian stuff. Like Jesus is a very important part of my life since I was a child. So this is just built in on the person that I am, and it's something that I can deny.
And is your
Uh,
background evangelical, Catholic?
Evangelical. So that came from my mother. My mother was brought up in a evangelical household, and then she married my father. They met in church. They were both from God's Assembly back then.
So more charismatic,
Uh,
more Pentecostal.
yeah, more Pentecostal. So I was born in as a member of assembly in God's Assembly, and my mother, I think my mother is the biggest reference I had. I was lucky enough to have my mother and my father sharing the same faith, but my mother was that example of love and kindness, like limitless, like Jesus,
Mm,
that you can extend to others, and you can extend that to the community, and you can and apply that to be a very dedicated Christian in your community and to do as much good as you can as a follower of Jesus. So that was a very beautiful example. So as children, and we're in a family gathering, we are laughing about this, how our childhood was different from other friends that we had because we only listened to Christian songs at home. So we know how to sing like very old Christian songs that many people from now don't even know. Um, we learned about that, and we like weekends we used together to watch like those cartoons with that biblical stories with
sure.
Jesus. I don't know if that was a
Do you
big
have a
thing
favorite?
for
Was it like a Veggie
Brazil.
Tales kind of a thing, or?
No, yeah, but it was that it was not that cartoony looking, but it was it was called Stories of Jesus. Yeah, maybe I
There are
can
so many of these
share.
all over. Yeah.
Yeah, but that one I remember, and that's still when I pray. It's involuntary, but that's the image of Jesus that comes to my mind because he had such a calming and
Mm,
comforting voice, and that was the work of the person that was dubbing like Jesus for Portuguese, but it was calming and always like brought us to a place of reflection and so much love built in each
mm,
word. And that was so important to us because those are the stories that fed us when we were children. That those are the stories that we told each other and we discussed, and we were very good. I don't think I'm that good anymore, but we were like playing like biblical trivia and this kind of stuff, and that's the household that I had, and it was such a beautiful one. I feel that I was very blessed to have this opportunity to
so
share that with
that's
my
so
family.
wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for sharing. It's such a beautiful household and model you had in your mother, and church community that you had. I'd like to ask about that going vegetarian step for you, and then later vegan. How that fit with your faith? So it came about after you saw that image of, or that video of how pigs are slaughtered and the kind of fear in their eyes, and it sounds like you had mercy for them. Um, was it hard to reconcile that with faith? And I know a lot of Christians are really big meat eaters, right? And like there are probably a lot of people listening to this podcast who haven't gone vegetarian or vegan. I would argue that's not even the most important thing they have to do to help animals. Like you can still eat meat, but donate to charities like Sinergia Animal or others, and do even more good. If you think of the most impact they could have for animals, it's probably more important that they put money towards helping animals. But yeah, how did you how did your going vegetarian fit in with faith? And I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, so I have to tell you maybe a previous story in those like breaking moments in life where you question everything and you go through some processes. You know that churches sometimes are not the most welcoming places when you have questions
When
or
you ask the
doubts.
wrong question, right?
Hmm?
when you ask the tough
Yeah,
questions. Yeah, not every church
yeah,
is seeking truth in that kind of way, right?
yeah. And even today I have more maturity to look back to that moment and say like those who come to Jesus are just who need it more. So there are many compassionate people in many places that have never like stepped a foot on church and never heard of Jesus and are still amazing people. And those who come closer, I think, are those who need it more. So if you think of the church as built around people and people who need it, we
Mm,
are talking about people with um, rough nature, like people
mm.
that can be hard, people who can be mean at times even. So at some point, I think I got a little discouraged of being part of a church, or yeah, I questioned some things, and I think I broke inside. The moment when I decided to be vegetarian
But
was
was that
another moment in which
connected to resistance to vegetarianism, or just in general jaded with the church, or the brokenness or the fallenness of the people in church?
it wasn't directly connected to vegetarianism because this was way before this moment that I had this breakthrough around churches. I think I had, or I was taught at some moment, I had a vision of Jesus and of God that was mistaken somehow. I thought because I was a child of God and was so connected to Jesus and so dedicated in the Christian work that I was developing, I would be spared of some sufferings or spared of the consequences of some poor choices that I made. And that didn't translate to reality. And at some point, I was very disappointed with some people in church and also with the consequences of some choices that I made for being too naive or too young, not knowing that those choices and the suffering that came from those were not punishment. And
Mm.
that I think is a mistake that we as Christians make sometimes, is to drive people to think that they are going to be punished somehow if they sin, if they make mistakes. Those are not punishments. The consequences are those that bring us up to a better state of ourselves. So, but I was too young to realize that. So at some moment, I was questioning everything, even my relationship with Jesus and Christianity and church and everything. But from question, then came this more critical version of me that later questioning, started asking questions about the animals too, and how we couldn't, even though we preach about mercy and compassion, we couldn't extend that to other beings that were clearly suffering too. So what was the difference? What was the line that we draw? And that's the thing that you said, like Christians eat a lot of meat, and that doesn't resonate much with the compassion that we pray or that we preach. Uh, but thinking that if you look at church and people, because people are flawed, right? We are not perfect, and that's why we need like to be there so
Mm.
much. Um,
So do
we
you think
see
of it
that
in the
some.
sense of like the church itself isn't perfect and it never claimed to be perfect? It's a place for broken people. And so you shouldn't look at the church's lack of care for something as like a normative example that, oh, because the church is this way, we should all be this way. But all
Oh,
along the church admitted it was broken, and that's why we need God. That's what I hear you saying.
yeah, and that's true. You know, all need, and I think the closer we get, that means that we need it more. So if I was brought up like it wasn't by chance that I was brought up so close to Jesus, I probably had this rough nature that needed to be in closer touch with that compassion, that love that is the essence of Christianity. So, but I don't think it's a mistake of the church itself or the teachings or nothing, the scriptures that says that people should be perfect. It's just something that I think we have higher standards when you're looking at people that follow like the Christian teachings, like, oh, this shouldn't happen or these other things
Sure.
shouldn't happen. And it's not true. That's not true at all. Like, we are all learning and trying to be better, and we are in need of getting better, and that's why we are there. So, understanding that. was very important to me, and understanding the essence of Christ as my model and not other people as
Mm,
my model was something that was very reassuring for me. Like looking and seeing that even through the whole turbulence and the whole noise that we have in the world, we still have this role model of perfection and pure love and limitless heart that we can uh, keep on trying to be more alike. So we have something bigger than us to look
mm,
and to inspire us to be better.
mm, mm.
And yeah, I think that
Could
line of thinking that's what brought me later to
that's very
vegetarianism.
encouraging, especially when Christians aren't perfect, and also the animal space. If you're somebody who cares a lot about animals, it's easy to look around and see so few Christians and feel really discouraged. At least I feel that way sometimes, as someone who thinks that God cares a lot about animals and that Christians should be doing a lot to help animals. Sometimes the representation that I expect just isn't there, and I think you're right. Instead of asking why aren't more Christians helping? Maybe asking why am I not helping more, and how can I be more Christ like? How can I follow the example of Jesus? I think that's exactly the right kind of posture we should take. But I do want to push back a little bit. I think many Christians who don't help animals would agree that animal torture is bad, animal cruelty is wrong. But when push comes to shove, there's only so much margin they have and so many resources, and they would rather help people. And if you look at scripture, it seems like God's often talking to people. God is doing things for people. Jesus came as a man to die for the world. I guess people debate about whether the world is all of creation or whether the world is just the world of people. But it does seem like in scripture, sometimes God puts quite a bit more concern for humans than for animals. So what do you answer when Christians ask you, in a world of so much human suffering, why focus on mercy for animals?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I could bring here to this conversation some citations from the scriptures about like all the moments in which the animals were mentioned or mentioned with compassion. I could bring you a lot of citations of those and we could discuss, but I'm sure you have been exposed to that in other conversations, so you must like maybe know
Well,
some
are there
citations
any
by
specific
heart.
ones that are influential for you, or any that come to mind? Maybe not all of them, but any particular ones that for you are helpful examples?
Well, from my childhood, I was always fascinated with the story, and I don't know how to say his name in English, but it was Balaam and the mule.
Ah, yeah,
That
Belial's donkey. Is that right?
I don't know,
Yes,
how do you call it in English?
I think they say Belial's donkey or Belial's
Balaam's
ass.
donkey. It was
Balaam's,
okay.
yes,
Okay, it sounds similar to what we had. Yeah, all my reading is very in Portuguese, so some names change completely.
sure,
But
sure.
it was very cool to think of an animal being brought to speak and to be heard into a significant matter to change the direction of someone's action. That was something that I always thought was very intriguing. The idea of talking to animals and connecting to animals was there in the Bible, even in the Noah's
For
example.
listeners, for reference, this is Numbers 22 verses 21 to 39. Um, but no, that is a great example.
But I do have a better one, and that comes more from my adult experience, and maybe I'll have to like go through it more in detail to explain why that for me is a reference that resonates with my work with animals. Is the example of the woman that was brought to Jesus because she was caught in adultery. So just going through the story, she was brought to Jesus by the law people from that time, and they, as this was an infraction, a sin that was um, like directly connected to punishment by death. They were kind of trying to trick Jesus into saying something that would maybe show a tendency to one side or the other. If you went with law, you would be condemning the woman to be killed. If you went in favor of the woman, he would be against the law. And there was this conflict into doing the compassionate thing and doing the right thing, what the law supported back then. And for me, that's the story, like the whole New Testament that the most represents what the endless love of Jesus was. because his response was so based in love, because he brought people to reflection, like, okay, if this woman is going to be condemned for this sin, how about you? And how about the sins that you have committed? Without needing to say that precisely, but just indicating that to people, he was able to change everybody's approach to that situation. And people just left in shame because they could see that if I'm going to put this person through this because of sin, like what's to happen to me? So what do I have to offer back? And then you would think like, okay, Jesus is perfect. He had no sin. Would he condemn the woman? But then he doesn't. And above the law, he brings compassion and he tells her to just like go ahead and live her life free from that burden of that sin. And that's so inspiring to me because today we have this standard, this approach, like we always ate animals and we have this reality, like we are both animals. We are, some people use the example in Genesis to say that animals are a dominion. And what does dominion really means? Like we have to overpower everything and everyone and put everything to our service. And then comes Jesus and he just like questions the hypocrisy of living a life of law, a law that was supposed to protect family. And family is based in boundaries and in love. And still use that to kill someone who was in the
Mm,
wrong. And then he brings this perspective that love and compassion should be above the standard that we see.
mm,
So if this is the established reality, we kill animals, we confine animals, we put them through miserable lives, and then we kill them and we eat them and we profit on their like miserable lives and their bodies and their resources. Uh, what's what is stopping us from rising to the point of view of compassion and rising above the standard of doing that to animals and just choosing a different path? So Jesus in that day demonstrated love to that that's been neglected or that's been seen as just like a victim of the system. So that's the law. That's what we have. That's what we do. So this person is doomed. And then Jesus just invites you to how about love and compassion? Won't that go
mm.
above what we see as a standard? Do you have to keep on acting as we always acted just because this is the established reality, or we can use our mercy and the teachings of love to rise above that and look at the situation in a more compassionate way? So for me, that's the story that moves me the most. I think in the whole Bible, and it's something that really inspires me to working for to break the pattern,
Mm.
to look into the situations that we see that we recognize they are not okay with more compassionate eyes. And
Do you think it's
you have
possible from a biblical perspective that it's like technically okay under the law to eat animals, right? Like God told Peter, kill and eat. God told people in the Old Testament that they could eat animals. Like it's technically okay to eat animals, but it's just that lacking to restraining from the kind of compassion and love of caring for animals and treating them as God intended. It's analogous to that case with the woman at the well, right? Like in some sense, maybe the people were correct to condemn the woman, but that wasn't the highest standard. The ultimate high standard was Christ's compassion. So we might say, in some sense, what they're doing is technically correct or just, but it's really not embodying the fullest extent of Christ's compassion or love.
Yeah, that's true. You summarized this well. And also, I'd like to add, and please share your perspective on this because this is more of my sensation. Even though it was allowed, it was never encouraged for
Mm,
people to eat animals. If you look at the like Genesis and you look at Adam and Eve, they were never encouraged to kill anything before sin come and before the shift that came after the
the
choice
fall, right?
they made. Yeah, they were given to feed themselves just herbs and plants, and that was the established thing that we had later. And then it looked like further like in the future when people were praying because they wanted meat in the desert. I think it's
This might have been the
Deuteronomius.
Exodus.
Yeah, Exodus.
Right.
Yeah. So people were there walking in the desert, and they wanted meat. And at the point that they were so annoying about that, that God gave them meat, but that was not the said that God was giving them bread. They were supposed to feel blessed about that, but they wanted more. They wanted something different. But I don't think it was ever encouraged. And people will say, "Oh, Jesus fed people with fish." But if you consider the reality of what was fishing back then and what's
Mm,
fishing now, or the reality of an animal that was killed in biblical times, and we have to remember that in the I won't remember precisely what book, but in the basis of God's teachings right in the beginning, he taught people on how animals should be killed so that it was less cruel and it was cleaner. There was still uh, hints of care on that.
right.
Or when in the New Testament, when Jesus says, like, look, don't be anxious about anything. Look at the birds; they are
Mm,
provided for. They have what they need. And then, how important wouldn't you be? But I don't think it was intended for us to think of us as superior in a way that we can overpower the others, but in a way that God cares for all of us, and we should care for the others that need us too because we have God providing to us. And I've heard a beautiful saying. I won't remember who was the owner of that. It was like the angels are to us what we should be to the animals. Like
mm,
if you are superior and if they are our dominion, they would be given to us to be taken care of, not to be mistreated and put into suffering. So I don't believe that goes against. It's a matter of interpretation. And if you go back to the essence of God's love and go to the essence of God's uh, Jesus teachings, you would see that it's love. It's limitless love and compassion and mercy. And I can't see when I think of that Jesus that I told you about
yes.
from my childhood. That one that really touches me and it's the one that still touches me. If I think of him, I can't imagine him abiding with the kind of situation that we put animals through today.
Mm,
So it's not just a matter of killing and eating animals. We are talking about a system called factory farming that's doing way worse than just killing out of need, killing and feeding people. It's profiting a lot to the expense of the animals. It's putting them into unnecessary suffering is exploiting the labor of those who have no choice but work in those industries in many times, even in illegal situations sometimes. So it's a system of exploitation that was brought out of the interest of profit. It's not about like killing an animal feeding your family anymore. It's something that's much bigger. It's this oppressing system, and I really ask myself like the opposite question: how can we talk about love and have our heart full of love and still hold this and not let this be expanded to reach the
right.
animals?
So it was for you. It wasn't the question of should I not hurt or eat animals. It's more the question of how can I positively show the love and compassion of Christ. And then when you see an animal like a pig being slaughtered, screaming with tears in its eyes, you can only see it through the eyes of Christ. And for me, it was a very similar reason I went vegetarian. So,
Yeah.
similar desire to exemplify, embody the love of Christ in all areas of life, and asking myself what that would look like. And being confronted with the reality that the vision of Eden in Genesis was vegetarian, that God didn't give them animals to eat, but God gave them the green herb. And even animals seem to eat only plants back then. So that's part of the original design. And we want to say that's good, right? I mean, the Eden story doesn't make
Wasn't
much
it a
sense.
beautiful one?
Yes.
Like all of us living together in collaboration, living side by side, being like us taking care of the animals and the earth. So we had like a happy planet and happy and healthy animals, and we could live in a collaborative way. And I think that's also the essence of everything. That's how uh, the Bible starts. So it's
Right.
the first teaching that comes. It's this
And it's
harmony that
also
was
how it
there.
seems to end, right? Like if you look at visions and revelations about the new heavens and the new earth, in Revelations 22, we read about there being no more suffering, death, or pain. And it's hard to imagine something like the current state of factory farming existing in heaven, right? Like existing in the new creation. And so it's hard to justify perpetuating something with brokenness that would be wiped out in the new heavens and new earth. Like and for me, it was also looking at what Jesus said about the birds, even, right? I think you were correct to bring those up, and it would be very strange if uh, God uses analogies to birds, or even when Christ says, "Oh, Israel, Israel, how I'd love to gather you under my wings, like a hen gathers her chicks." It'd be so strange if he would use examples to animals, if we were to have no concern for animals or no sense of sympathy for them. It'd be
And the whole
terrible
analogy
examples
of
to pick.
the shepherd, if you think of that, Jesus
Right?
mentions the shepherd and the
Is a
work
good
of sheep
shepherd,
so
right?
much. Yeah. And you think of the good shepherd that leaves the 99 sheep behind and then go seek for one, to save one, to rescue one. And that's another very beautiful story. But then you have the when people ask about the Saturday Sabbath, and then they ask, oh, what happens if a sheep falls on a pit on Saturday? Like, should I rescue? And Jesus' answer was, yeah, they should rescue. So again, it's compassion going above the established law. And I think it's beautiful what you mentioned. That was very moving. I didn't think through Revelations, but that's true. If you think of Jesus' missions of restoring the state of the original earth, bringing peace to earth, with no suffering, no more crying, that's such a beautiful and moving reality that we, deep inside, all of us miss that. We miss that deeply, and we are just
Mm.
like deluded with this reality that's been established around us. But the truth is, we miss that because that's the essence of us. So having compassion is something that we actually can avoid. We sometimes try to look away from that, but it bothers us because we know, like deep inside, that that's not the natural state that we want, and it's not what we envision for the future of
Mm.
ourselves or the earth and mankind.
So I think that's really what we're doing when we care for animals. It's not just stooping down to care for some stupid birds. It's not just random acts of kindness to random animals. It's part of this redemptive vision from Genesis to Revelations, from the creation to the eschaton, being agents of renewal for God's purposes in this world. And so I think what you're doing is quite important. And I want to encourage you in that, but I also want to get into some more specifics. We spent a lot of time
Sure.
having a wonderful conversation about faith and about your background, and I'm glad we did that. I want to ask a few questions about Sinergia Animal and about specifically what you're doing there to help animals and bring about real change for animals. And maybe you could walk us through maybe a little bit about like the current problem of factory farming. I was reading the animal charity evaluators report on Sinergia Animal, and they mentioned that in Brazil, where you work, there's still 40 million pigs that are intensively farmed, enduring a lot of awful practices, like the sow crates, where mothers can't move for what 6+ weeks on end for their piglets to suck from them, and also like you mentioned, early slaughter and many awful conditions in these farms. Chickens are all around the world kept in cages so cramped that they can't spread their wings. There's over 800 million egg-laying hens subjected to these kinds of practices in countries where Synergia works. Those are the main kinds of sufferings that come to mind, and those are really big numbers. When you think about the problem that Synergia Animal is tackling, is it mostly the suffering of egg-laying hens and pigs?
Uh, it's bigger than that. I think, okay, we started in 2017, just like 2 to 4 activists doing the work. It was a very small organization, and it was the only one back then, one of the only ones in our countries doing the work dedicated to the global south. So this is something that we always say we are very bold, because we were willing to make institutional change when we were really small. Um, and we work with pressure campaigns. So we work facing our antagonists somehow, the industry, and asking them, demanding from them the changes that we want to see into better standards in welfare for animals. So we
So
started
give
like
me an
that.
example of that. So like I'm McDonald's, I have caged eggs in my supply chain, and you approach me. What is it you say, and how is it you get me to have more humane practices for my eggs?
Okay. Uh, in Brazil, we work with pigs and dairy cows. In other countries, we mostly work with cage-free policies. So we always look into working with whichever area is more neglected. So that's why we have different choices for different countries. That's according to other organizations working, doing similar work. Here in Brazil, we have amazing organizations doing cage-free, so we dedicate ourselves to work with pigs and dairy cows. So what we do is we start with corporate outreach. So we reach out to potential targets that if we could affect change on them, through that we could benefit millions of animals. So we don't go for small producers or for small industries, but we reach for the big producers very boldly so to demand from them higher standards for animals. So we start that by approaching them through emails and other more formal communications, but still a little distant. If they don't respond, then we start like threatening them. I don't know if that would be the best word for that, but we start telling them that that's going to lead to a campaign and a public exposure of the reality that they are still contributing to perpetuate, and that
Are
the
those on
audience is going to know that.
Instagram, like Facebook, Twitter? How do you do those campaigns?
Our pressure campaigns, they are on the street. We very often
Oh,
go
okay.
in front of the buildings of the big companies, their headquarters, and we have our T-shirts and our signs, and we create very
Have you been
creative
on those
campaigns.
yourself?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Those are amazing opportunities for us to bond and to be there demanding the changes that we want. What we came to learn is that the standards that many of these industries apply in global south countries are way lower than those that they apply in Europe or in North America, for example. That's because our law is still more permissive. There's still less people caring or knowing about the situation of animals exploited for food. So they come here to exploit that too, and that's another uh, way for them to profit and to find easier ways and cheaper ways to produce their products on the expenses of animals. So doing this in the countries where we are, because we are focused on the global south, it's where we do our work, it's where we are born. Today we are in 8 countries in Latin America and Southeast Asia. It's a big challenge because we don't have still the legal background that we could build our cause on. People are not aware, so we have to do a lot of work in awareness about the organization, our cause, and the reality of animals in the industry. So it's a big endeavor, it's a big challenge, and we do that being very public and very creative and very bold. So we go to the streets, we have our signs, and we make demonstrations, we take pictures, and we shame and we name the companies. Sometimes we do some puns on their names or their logos at the moment, and that works because some of these companies they proud themselves of saying that they are family oriented or they are very sustainable and very committed to like good values, and
Right.
showing their audience, their public, their clients, that that's not the reality and what they are contributing to. So for that, we have the support of our work with undercover investigations. That's very important. It's one pillar of our work. We use those images in our favor to campaign and to demonstrate what happens to the animals in factory farming in our countries. In the beginning, this was something that was always important to us because our founder, Carolina, she came from investigations. That's how she became vegan and advocate, and then created Synergia years later. But I think mostly because people think that those things that they see, the cruel things that they see in factory farming, they don't happen in our countries. Because we are smaller, our meat and dairy and eggs, they come from smaller producers, and people still have that image of the
It's the image of the
chicken
happy
in
farm with,
the
yeah, all the
backyard.
animals
Yeah,
hanging out. Right.
yeah, and that's a lot for us to like bring down that image that's been like even encouraged by the industry, of happy
Right.
animals, like living in collaboration and willing to give their resources and their bodies to us. That's not something that's real. So working with undercover investigations is something that's crucial to our work. We use those images to support the work we do when you have to go through pressure campaigns. So on
Yeah.
pressure campaigns phase, that's where we go to the business headquarters and we tease them a lot on social media too. So we have campaign actions that happen only online, and our activists, they go and they demand change, and they go to the most recent post on Instagram of one of those industries, and they ask why they haven't committed to whatever better standard we are advocating for. And we are very annoying and relentless.
Yeah.
And I think
Well, you
that,
have to be to get the job done sometimes, right? So,
yeah,
yeah, so we're running short on time, which is so sad because this has been such a
it's true.
rich, meaningful conversation to me. Some things I wanted to talk about that I'll just flag over now and provide more resources to, and invite you to as well, are things like how well do these work, and do they work? I'll just mention right now, they seem to work very well, right? So Sinergia Animal, I think in this past year, you secured about 40 cage-free egg commitments and about 10 pig welfare commitments. We talked about how those work. Up to date, you've secured hundreds of these kinds of commitments to enact change for, I think last year, it was 113 million animals. Is that right?
113 million animals. Yeah, yeah. And we just went through this very thorough and comprehensive evaluation from ACE, Animal Charity Evaluators, and that was a challenge. They are very thorough. That was a long process. And
The world's
then,
best evaluator for animal charities, and they put you as a
yeah,
top, or as a recommended charity.
yeah,
Um,
here we are, and it's our seventh year on a row. We got the title when we got there as a recommended charity in 2018, and we managed to keep our status to this day. So having this for the
so
seventh year in a row was very special.
it's incredible. I mean, this is part of the reason why I give to K-Tria campaigns like Synergia's, and what I would encourage Christians for Impact, Christians who want to make an impact in the world, to do so. Just look at the dollar by dollar basis, right? So this 113 million number, was this just last year, the number of animals that were affected?
The potential number of each year of
Each
the
year.
impact to it cost. Yeah.
And your budget is only about, what, $2 million or so?
It's a little over. This year we reached 3 million. You mean our general budget or operating budget is
Correct. Yeah.
about 2 million? Yeah.
So if you
But
think of it dollar for dollar, you're talking about helping dozens of animals for every single dollar that you donate, right? This isn't some small number. This is like, if you'd be willing to step down. I mean, if you'd be willing to, like, the image that comes to mind is like, if you imagine a bird in a cage, or a pig strangled on the ground, and you think it's worth even just a quarter to help them, to free them from their plight, you should be willing to give to a charity like Sinergia Animal, which is actually probably several times more impactful than that. And that's just like
yeah,
common sense thing. Like, who wouldn't give 25 cents to free an animal from
yeah,
a
right.
cage, or to free a pig from an inhumane slaughter, or from being pinned in a sow crate? Um, for a while, I was pretty skeptical of actually vegetarianism in general, because I didn't think these things were happening, and then I learned these awful things were. And then for a while, I was pretty skeptical that there's anything that we could do to tackle what's happening on farms. I thought the ag industry was just too big, and the problem was too complicated. But then I learned through animal charity evaluators that the kinds of campaigns that you're doing actually do really seem to work. So you have organizations, food companies that really did not look like they were going to make cage-free commitments, really were not going to change. And then after pressure from groups like yours, they do. And there's been some great case studies on that on the Animal Charity Evaluators website. I highly recommend, if listeners are curious about this or unsure, I highly recommend checking out the report for Synergia Animal on Animal Charity Evaluators website. Or I imagine they could get in touch with you too, Caroline, because a big part of what you do, and we
Yeah,
haven't
of
talked
course.
about this specifically, is raising money to try to help more animals, and help connect people who have a heart and compassion for animals, to convert that into concrete change.
Yeah,
So
maybe I can make short pitch on that. So what makes us so effective is that we always look into make institutional change, level of change. So we aim for the big companies, we aim for the big institutions for our diet change program. So every change that we make, it's meant to impact the lives of millions of animals because of the reach that those institutions that we approach have. Also, there's the matter of the currency. So donations in dollars, in pounds, in euros, they make a huge difference in our countries because of the difference in currencies and the fact that we work a lot in synergy. So you're always looking for ways to work in collaboration with other organizations, other partners and institutions. So that makes us bigger, makes us stronger, and makes the movement move forward faster. And I think those elements combined with the pressure campaigns, because the companies are not changing out of the love in their hearts. We are not in that moment in history yet. Maybe, yeah, it won't happen out of love. It happens out of pressure, and still we don't have the legal background to support that. So being bold enough to face those companies is something that brought us the big results that we have. You can just check the report and see the numbers that we have. Until the end of the year, we have a very generous donor matching any donations that we get from individuals 4 times. So every dollar becomes $5. And with $1, you have the potential to have normally at least 53 to 54 chickens in our countries, but that's going to be 5 times bigger if we get any donations from individuals at the end of the year. So it's a good chance to make a great impact. And as you said before, maybe we cannot do all the changes that we want in our lives immediately. I can testify about how difficult it is sometimes to make the shift and make the transformation, and how much more impactful can be to dedicate your resources, your financial resources, to organizations that are making a difference. So not just us, but we have other very powerful organizations working in our countries. And doing this in the global south is crucial because as the income grows, the consumption, the production of animal products grow. And if we don't address this early, this is going to be a huge problem, as we can see that it has developed to be in bigger countries, in more developed countries. So yeah, I think that summarizes a little our current
We'll have
movement.
to we'll have to bring you back on to talk more specifically about careers that Christians can take to help animals besides just donating and working for organizations like Sinergia Animal, which are you ever hiring? And I imagine you hire locally, right? So I don't think most of the listeners would really be situated in the places where you'd be hiring. But I think we should have a conversation later about what that looks like, and also some more in-depth questions about some of the funding needs and dynamics in the animal space. But for now, I just want to say thank you so much. And this has been a wonderful conversation. I've learned a lot, and want to give you just one last chance to plug any specific resource or anything else before we wrap up.
Okay. Yeah, our talk took a shift to a different direction. I had like many other notes on other things that we could discuss. But please feel free to invite me anytime to discuss careers and challenges of being a fundraiser and the shift in careers from for-profit to non-profit. And there are many rich topics we can address. Thank you for this opportunity to have me here and to discuss a little our work in Synergia. You can, like any of our listeners now, can learn more about Synergia on our website. It's synergiainternational.org. Sorry. You can follow us on social media. You can read the very comprehensive report that we have from ACE. There's a lot of information there. And you can reach out to me. I'm Carolina Oliveira. I'm on LinkedIn, and you can find me through Sinergia Animal. And also, I'm connected and I'm always in the EA event. So just reach out and we can talk. I'd love to talk further about any of these topics that we brought here or any other that I can support you.
Awesome. Listeners, will include links in the description below for all these things. And also, if you want to get free one-on-one advising for your career, for how you can best make an impact for animals and for God's creation, you can do that for free. We have a service for this on our website, and we can connect you with mentors like Carolina if she's open to it. And I think she would be, who'd love to chat with you one-on-one, pray with you, and just give you insights and possibly connections for how you might take the next step for a career that has a massive impact for God's kingdom. So thanks again, Carolina, and thanks everyone
Um,
for watching. We'll see you again next time. This is part 2 of our conversation. We had such a good time last time discussing some of our shared Christian background and reasons for veganism that we didn't get to go deeper into the weeds about the intricacies of the work you're doing at Sinergia Animal, and also what it's like as a fundraiser, specifically in the animal welfare space, some of the challenges of being a fundraiser. Part of what we discussed before was the corporate campaigns, pressure campaigns, as you put it. But that's not all that you do at Synergia Animal. You also work on more institutional or systemic change. Could you walk me through some of the institutional projects you have?
Okay, thank you for asking about this. As I told you before, Nourishing Tomorrow is our dietary change program. Is one of my favorites in Synergia. In that program, we approach institutions to convince them and to prepare them to change one day to be fully plant-based. So this program is in operation in Colombia, Argentina, Indonesia, and very soon we are resuming the program in Thailand. And there we have amazing results as we reach out to schools, universities. So we do a change in institutional level. We can reach like millions of meals served, fully plant-based every year. So we go with our team of nutritionists and chefs, and we work with the staff in each institution to prepare them to change using their ingredients and keeping their current budget, change one day to be fully plant-based. And with that, we have the testimonials from people who have tried the food. And because we do that with a lot of care, we get very good feedback and the most cute pictures of kids trying vegan food. And they like some of them share that that's the best food they ever had. So we understand that this program is very important. Not only it has been singled out as one very effective program because of the reach that it has, but also we evaluate a lot, especially in the countries where it happens, in the countries where we operate, as the income grows for people there, the consumption, the production of animal products grows too. And that sometimes comes with some other side effects of this raised income. So as people tend to eat more fast food or eat food that's more processed due to that income in that increase in their income. And with that, sometimes they choose more sugar or food with more sugar or food that's not as healthy, food that's more processed. So teaching people how to prepare that in the institution sometimes is the first contact that they have with food that has been specifically designed, respecting their cultural aspects, but specifically designed to be healthy and fully nutritional, not just like food for the sake of food. So with that, we aim to reach more and more people through the diet change that we promote in the institutions, so that they have contact with vegan food for this first time, and we never know how far that can go.
Yeah, this seems really promising for long term changing institutions, not just a quick win. My past contacts with this has just been with someone named Rachel who worked in the New York City mayor's office to get them to incorporate meatless Mondays across New York City. And this was something that took years to implement. And by the end of it, I think they were influencing over 1 million school lunches every Monday. So if you compound that yearly, you're talking like 50 million plus meals a year going meatless in a city like New York, right? So that has knock-on effects as well. I imagine that's also a big part of the win from this is once you get one or two big universities or districts to incorporate this, others start to follow suit.
Yeah.
What are you already seeing are universities resistant to this? Are they picking it up? Like, what are some examples of success stories, or is it still more experimental? Have you figured out what works just yet?
No, the program is pretty well established right now. We have the most significant results in Argentina and Colombia. The program has been on for now, I think, since 2022 or 2021, if I'm not mistaken. But we got solid results. Also, reaching out to municipalities, especially in Argentina, we always get like a large reach of institutions that we can implement the program. And then comes the second challenge, that is implementation, because once we do get the institutions or the municipalities or the universities to agree with the program, then we have the second layer of work, that is reaching out to them, checking what they have available, what are the resources that they have, and preparing people so they have. I can share some pictures of you and your audience if you want. We have some beautiful ones.
We can
Um,
link in the description to
sure.
some of what you the pictures you're sharing. Right.
Yeah, and then we go through that very comprehensive work of understanding what resources they have available and making the implementation possible. And we also follow through after they implement to get feedback from people who are actually eating, how they receive the changes and how we can adjust so the program can run smoothly for 1 year in the agreement, but we follow through with the institutions after that too.
Nice. So we talked about corporate campaigns. We talked about some of the institutional work. Um, are there other areas that Synergia Animal works in that you're especially excited about or think listeners need to know about?
We talked a little about investigations too, is one of the pillars of our work. And we are part of a very exciting coalition called Stop Financing Factory Farming. In that organization, that coalition, we are partnering with other organizations like Friends of the Earth, some indigenous issues organizations, and some social groups too, to get the banks to improve their policies for animals, and also to get the developing banks to stop financing factory farming. Because the World Bank has recognized that factory farming is a problematic issue and it's causing a lot of damage to the planet. But still, especially in our countries, most of the funding that comes to this to keep growing factory farming comes from these development banks without people being aware. So you
Oh,
work
really?
with
So
some
it's like the
banks.
World Bank will offer a loan to some country to boost their agricultural output, and they'll spend that on factory farms.
Yeah, yeah, that happens a lot, and that's the reality of factory farming. People frequently ask why vegan products are so much more expensive or why they are not as available. And you have to remember, like, that they have in factory farming, they have the capability of growing things in scale the production very much, so that lowers the cost of the product. But also there's a lot of subsidies involved. We actually mentioned this when this year we were invited to talk in the annual meetings in the World Bank, and I was there to discuss that in a panel to talk about this document that they brought together called Recipe for a Livable Planet, in which they discussed the need for everybody to reduce the consumption of animal products. And we questioned why they still grant big loans. Last year, we conducted a very comprehensive investigation on dairy farms here in Brazil against Alvoar. It's one of the largest milk producers in the world and one of the largest in Brazil. After the investigations, we have the material to go through campaign, and we campaigned against the loan, and still they granted the loan after that. And we were deeply disappointed because that goes against what they are now like saying as a fact, that factory farming is very, very problematic to the world. So that still happens, and that's still a big part of the cost, the lower cost of animal products. That in the deep suffering animals go through.
Mm,
So yeah, due to all these
mm.
practice, they manage to uh, yeah, it's an unfair competition with vegan products. They're just like starting now. So yeah, it's very important for us to work on that basis too, because some of the people don't know or they are not aware of the part that their bank plays in animal suffering. And through
Yeah,
this
it
program, we
sounds like
want
a huge problem and a really hard one to surmount. Have there been results from advocacy and activism towards the
yeah.
World Bank and other multilateral institutions? Like, have there been any wins so far, or is this still in the land of theory about how we might influence them?
We're happy to say that there are good results, and we know those might come a little slower than other results that we get. But still, there's a need to do this now to get people aware of the problem and to address a big problem, as you said, as soon as we can. In 2022, we are able to stop a big loan with the coalition, and through campaigning, we stopped 2 million. Maybe we shouldn't keep them amount
Sure.
here. I don't know if I have the precise number, but we stopped a big loan for our bank through campaigning against the producer. And we also have this program where we rate the banks and get people to know what their banks are in their ranking of welfare issues or how much they care about the animals that are impacted through their work. And this year we got 11 banks, more new banks to report on that. It's called Banks for Animals, and I can also link this to you, and you can take a look later. So it's an exciting program too. It's another one that we are very proud to work with. Still, one of our smaller programs, but
Right.
another that we are very sad about.
Right, because you're mostly corporate campaigns, and then most of the rest is the institutional work, and then everything else is projects like this. Makes sense if it's still growing. So I'd like to transition. I have a transitional question before asking about your career and work as a fundraiser. A question I had this season as I was thinking about where to give to for animal charities is why Sinergia Animal over other really good, effective animal charities? And you mentioned it yourself. A lot of people who care about effective animal cruelty, animal welfare organizations might have heard about the Humane League, might have heard about animal charity evaluators, or some of these others, Mercies for Animals. I don't know where they are in the rankings nowadays, but maybe not about Synergia Animal. I suspect that's because you all are located in the global south. Why, for a donor like me, why might I give to Synergia Animal over the Humane League or in addition to the Humane League? Like, what's the competitive edge there? Of course, we're all friends here, but when people ask you that, what do you say?
First, I'd like to say that I really, really like these organizations that you mentioned, the Humane League and MFA, and there are so many others doing amazing work. Some are present in the countries where we are, but I think what makes Synergia unique is that our mission to work solely in the global south. So we are born here in the global south, and we hire people from the global south because we know there is a pressure, it's a pressing issue. We, as I told you, as the consumption grows, the problem gets bigger, and it's inevitable that as population grows and the income rises, that this is going to be a big problem. In some discussions, sometimes some people mention that it's urgent for countries like developed countries in the global north to do something, and that maybe there's no part for developing countries or underdeveloped countries to participate on that, and I disagree. There's a lot that we can do, and our people can be more aware of the realities of factory farming to participate in that decision and participate in that change. And because of the lower still the lower standards that we have for animals in the global south, many big companies from other countries come to explore those that extra space to work and to do things in a cheaper way, in a less expensive way, and that results in horrible practices for animals. And we're still fighting the early fight that I think has been fought in other countries before. So I think why Synergia? Because we are very effective, we get good results. And you can see that in our evaluation through ACE. And I think the fact that we have been evaluated through all these years, and it's our seventh recommendation in a row, it speaks a lot on our efficiency. but also because we are very bold and we are here fighting since there were very few organizations fighting. We are very aware of overlapping, so we do not do the work where it's been done greatly for by other organizations. And we try to do the work as well as we can.
Transitioning into work as a fundraiser. So I want to start with the fun question, which is really what's the best part about being a fundraiser for a nonprofit?
Okay, cool. That's a good one. Just to give you some context, as I told you, I didn't come from fundraising. This was an opportunity that came out of the need of the organization. I was there at the moment, and then the position, uh, the position came to me. It's been amazing. Uh, I think the best part of working in fundraising is the need that you have to be connected with everything that happens in the organization. So you get to know everybody and to talk to everyone. And you get to like a very deep understanding of what the organization does and each of our achievements. We get to celebrate with each team that we have. And being in a fully remote team, I think we're spreading 11, 12 countries now. This is a good opportunity. Like I can build my work around connecting and understanding what happens in the organization, and I think that's also a crucial part of the work, like knowing your business very well.
What are some of the hardest parts or most challenging parts about being a nonprofit fundraiser?
Okay, this is me. I think I get nervous every time I have to talk to a donor, to a potential donor, just because there's always that sense of it's like a first date. I have this friend called Marcela. She's a fundraiser too. She does amazing work in Brazilian Vegetarian Society. And she says that it's like a first date every time because you have to share good things and to make yourself interesting, but at the same time, you can't show too much or seem too needy, you know? So that's challenging and also exciting in a way. But I think the challenge is always to be prepared and to stay calm in this conversation.
Yeah, because some of these conversations are worth like tens of thousands of dollars if you think, right? Like now, of course, you don't view relationships in strictly monetary terms, but when I worked in sales, I used to have conversations with clients where I knew that sale would be make or break for a $5,000-$10,000 commission for the biggest leads, and for the biggest fundraisers or the largest potential gifts, right? They can be many times as large as that. I can imagine that's really nerve wracking. Uh, do you personally work mostly with a certain average gift size? How do fundraisers work with different donors across the team of fundraisers at an organization? Do they kind of divide and conquer? Some people tackle the foundations, other people tackle the small gifts. Walk me through that.
Okay, most of our funding, and that's pretty much the reality that I heard from many other animal protection organizations working with farmed animals. Most of our funding comes from big foundations, and most of them in the global north. We have been fortunate enough to encounter very good institutions that are willing to make change through our work and believe in us from the very beginning. And that has been it made our work possible and as big as it is nowadays. We are a pretty young organization, but we have reached a lot of good results for animals. So that's most of our funding. I'm responsible for that along with Carolina, our executive director. The participation of the executive director in the fundraising efforts, especially with big foundations and big donors, is very important. So it's not something that they can be disconnected to. So the very crucial conversations about the work and the path that the organization is following ahead is something that always interests those donors. So this is something that I share with Carolina. And we have the work to do among individual supporters, those that are not like big institutions or big foundations. They just people that want to donate. We have like a lot of people who took a pledge to donate 10% that come to us. A lot of people are enthusiasts of our work that comes from the effective altruism community. And with those, we have a different approach. We like to keep them informed and keep them knowing how important their contribution to our work is. So we share at least once a month newsletters about our like biggest achievements, the things that we are doing, the things that we are working on and planning on doing. And that's, I think that part is even more exciting because we're talking to people and it's very interesting to connect with them in a more personal level. So we do that through newsletters, as I mentioned, but we have some regular meetings at least once every quarter. In those days, they get the opportunity to talk to our directors, to our program leads, and ask questions about the programs. So that part's very exciting and interesting. Is like getting more people to know about the work because yeah, many people are not aware of what we do or why this is important or how this impacts animals. So it's very good to bring people in. It's some sort of movement building too. And
Right.
it's most of our individual donors also are in the global north, and we have this extra challenge of reaching out to people in
Yeah.
our countries too, where the culture of
So
donation is not that spread yet.
yeah, I had some questions about that. I mean, what effects do you see that has on Sinergia Animal, both positive and negative?
Yeah, I think because we have this clear mission of working in the global south, and we have been proving ourselves year through year with our results and our transparency, we rose to a position of trust with our donors. So most of the initiatives that we present or the challenges that we present, they are received with a lot of respect, and I think we are somehow recognized as being specialists in doing the work the way we do. So even though our most of our funding comes from the global north, and I know there are organizations there have a way of working in a different context. We get a lot of respect and space to do things the way it works better in our countries. I can't say that that's a reality for all the other organizations fundraising in the global north and working in the global south, but I can say that we have been very fortunate in that.
Yeah. What do you wish funders did differently? Like, do you wish they gave in more specific, like maybe larger chunks as opposed to smaller chunks, or more sustained over time? Do you wish they gave more unrestricted funds, or just in general as a fundraiser, what do you wish funders did differently?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked this because I've noticed this has been a question in some events that I attended, and funders are always looking for ways to do their work more effectively, get to know some of them do provide funds that are unrestricted. So those are good because the organization also needs like to pay for the support roles, resources, training, and some other crucial resources that sometimes are not covered by a restricted grant. With some of them, as some of the funders, as we have a good relationship, we can include those. So all the donations are very welcome. If they are restricted, we are going to do a good thing with them. If they come unrestricted, they're
If you weren't penalized for like sharing what you wish your funders did differently, like is there anything that just kind of like aggravates fundraisers like yourself, or like you just wish they did this one or two things differently? It would just make the whole process run better, but you just can't share it. It's like there's no non-awkward way to say it. I welcome you to be even more direct in sharing anything that aggravates you or is like slightly suboptimal or majorly suboptimal in the way that most funders do things.
okay. We have seen a shift of funding, not a shift still, but there's a movement of funding that goes a lot into uh, insects and shrimp now and fish too. And those are very, very relevant causes to cover. And sometimes, as fundraisers, funding for land animals like chickens and pigs, and I worry a little about the future of fundraising for animals like pigs, for example. Pigs, they are smart creatures. They build connections. They are loving. They are very much like a dog. People maybe are
Right,
not
right.
enough aware of that, and they go through incredible amount of suffering in the industry. But still, if you think of the number of animals impacted, chickens like laying hens are like they outnumber them. And if you think of fish or shrimp or other animals like insects, they are going to outnumber those two. So if you think of the number of individuals, pigs are maybe not there anymore, and we wish there was a way to make it more clear, like of a ratio of how much pain you endure through the process of being farmed versus the number of animals infected. because I think if we have like a vision that could make that very clear, the pigs would be the
Right.
higher on the list. So that's a concern that I have sometimes when I see these new and amazing organizations coming to do work to impact the largest number of individuals, and that's so important. But
You have this kind of like
um,
general maybe confusion where we're wondering like, if I can help one person or I can help 1,000 pigs or I can help like, you know, a million plus fish. Like, um,
yeah,
it
that's the
sounds like that
thing.
uncertainty kind of ripples through the organizations too.
When you go through, and that brought me back to the Christian thought around the mercy that we have for animals that we discussed in the first part. If we go back to like doing the most good as a concept, how can you measure the amount of good that you do for an animal in deep suffering compared to like another one in another kind of suffering? We now have the numbers, and we have like science behind measuring the amount of suffering that chickens and pigs and cows go through the process of the, and there's a lot of scientific information around that. I can share that with you too. All the numbers that we provide to our donors and supporters are through scientific calculations. That's something that we value a lot. But if you think of doing the most good, sometimes you have to look into the individual aspect as well, not just the number. I believe that there is doing the most good in avoiding the most suffering and not just reaching out to the largest number of individuals possible. But on a more personal level, that's something that I consider a lot. So how much suffering I want to help avoid, and not just how many animals I can impact. So taking that into consideration is already an
Right.
important step.
But I imagine that message is tricky to land, right? Because some of the people you want to raise money from are going to give to help cats and dogs, right? And part of the reason they should give to something like Sinergia Animal is because you help so many animals, right? You help so many millions of chickens or pigs. And so, the shrimp welfare comes along and they want to say, well, we can help even millions more, right? And at some point, it'll be self defeating. But what I hear you saying is the suffering matters most, is like how much these beings suffer and doing the most good by alleviating the most suffering, whether we're helping a pig or a chicken or something else. As a nonprofit fundraiser, what are some of the most creative ways you've gotten people to give money?
Creative. Um, More in the individual level, I think we have more room to be creative. Like the foundations, they in general have such a structured way to be reached out by organizations that in those we don't have much space to do different stuff. But when we talk about individuals and people who really want to support our work in the individual level, we are always like coming up with new things. But going back to your question, I think one of the most fun programs that we have in Synergia, it's an internal initiative. It's called Synergia Day. And that was an initiative that we brought in the development department, and it's been on for almost 2 years now. Every
Is it like a
semester,
like a fundraising day, one day a year you
yeah,
go hard on? Yeah.
yeah, it's a grassroots fundraising and celebration day. We gather all the teams nationally, and everybody engages in some sort of fundraising activities. So this year, it was the first time that we invited our teams to go to the streets and to do like in-person fundraising, because in other years we did some tele fundraising. We shared messages of appreciation to our donors in video or emails, and that was pretty much it. This was the first time that we had people on the streets doing stuff, and people came up with very creative stuff. So we had people talking on like on parks and setting booths some places to sell merch, and they have very cool and cute T-shirts and other merch in Synergia too. So bringing the word and leafletting and talking to people, that was so energizing for most of our teams. Like everybody went out, and we have like these beautiful pictures of our teams in Indonesia, in Colombia, and Thailand. And that's a day for everybody to remember the efforts that we are putting for the animals, what we are doing together, and why what we do as an organization is important, and sharing that from a very like true place on their hearts with the people who are willing to support us or just willing to listen to us. So I think that's pretty creative, and that also opens the development department that is under my responsibility to learn about the specificities of fundraising in each country. So learning about what works better or not or doesn't work at all in each country where we
How many
operate.
countries do you fundraise from?
Among our countries, the only one that we can't fundraise at the moment is Indonesia because of some legislative issues. But we fundraise in all of our countries in a smaller scale compared to the supporters that we have in the global north. The quarterly talks that we have, those are also like pretty new, and we got good responses from them. So what we do is to invite all of our donors, and for that we don't have like a minimal amount. If you contribute, you are invited to come and talk about one of our programs. We had a very special one about investigations
This is
held
like
with
over Zoom.
Carolina.
You do this once every three
Yeah,
months or so.
yeah, over Zoom. We invite over all of our supporters to come. They just like have a very quick subscription and they can come and ask questions directly to our program leads. And in this one specifically about investigations, it was Carolina, our executive director. She started the working for animals in investigations, so she has this very deep background and very interesting stories. Yeah, and that was an occasion for people to just come and ask questions about the work and how we are progressing and what we aim for the future and how we are tackling our challenges. And it's very good. We have interesting conversations in those calls too.
Yeah. So this might be a bit of a faux pas, but do fundraisers talk amongst each other about how much they fundraise? Is that kind of like a mark of effectiveness as a fundraiser? I mean, I imagine so. But is that something you're able to share about? Like, so one way to think about this is like, if you're just starting off as a fundraiser, should you be expecting to hit like certain benchmarks, like 50,000, 100,000 in new gifts, 200,000? And I imagine if you're not hitting those targets, it's maybe not the best fit for you, or maybe it's more complicated than that. There's other factors too, like how healthy is the organization? You know, is the organization the kind of organization that is worth giving money to, let alone the fundraiser? Do fundraisers talk about exactly how much they fundraise, and is that like a mark of success and or even distraction for you?
Uh, about how much we don't. And this is something that I think could be still be improved is the communication among fundraisers in the organizations that do similar work. We're always open to talk and to discuss. Some are very willing to share a lot of information.
But if you were applying for your next, now you're not going anywhere, but let's say 5 years from now, Synergia Animal solves all of the world's animal problems. You're applying for your next fundraiser job. You'll probably share on your like CV how much money you raised and like what kinds of gifts you were able to secure and relationships you were able to build for Synergia Animal, right?
That makes sense. I never thought of having a resume for another position. Not yet, but it's good to think of us solving all the problems that are there for animals. But yeah, I think to measure success, to be a little more pragmatic on how we measure success. So, of course, the gross amount of what we fundraise is a good indicator of how the work's going, and that's going to be when it comes to an organization as organized as Sinergia Animal and others that are there in the movement. That will be held in a very transparent way. So you can go through our website, for example, go in our transparency page, and you can see the list of all the amounts that we fundraised and who it came from. So that's going to be held in the most effective, in the most transparent way. So that's a good thing. But I think having enough resources to reach the goals for our programs, I think is a more precise KPI for us to keep. For example, every time we are reaching to a new donor that we never talked before, a new potential foundation that's probably or possibly going to donate to Synergia's work, we want to see what connects. So what we do that connects to the priorities of that foundation. Are there similarities? Do you think they are a good foundation for us to reach for? And then we decide on that. And once we build a proposal, we build thinking of the work. So it's not just about getting the money, but having the amount that we need to support the work. Most of them actually ask for a budget breakdown to know exactly how much we need for each part of the work, and we have to explain that. But I think that's how we know that the money in how we make transparent that the money is going to be put to a good use. Um, so yeah, reaching out to new donors and bringing the resources that are needed for the goals that we have for the programs is another layer of a good way to measure success. And when we talk about individuals, as I told you, it's a movement building work. So it's about bringing more awareness about the organization. So in those initiatives, we prioritize how many people we can reach for. So how many people are getting our newsletters? How many people are opening our newsletters? How many people are engaging and coming to the meetings that we have where they can ask questions to the
Sure. So it's
program
not just how
heads.
much money was raised this year, but it's also how many people did we reach? How many people were engaged? How many people were coming to events? How good were the conversations and how was the energy in the room and were people excited and keen to do more?
Yeah, how willing people are to talk to us. So those are all a little more like qualitative indicators somehow.
Right.
Okay, you can always put those on number, how many people, but we always think of the reach of that. And that's another cool thing about Synergia. We are an organization that learns a lot. And we want to learn from the countries where we work. So getting people's responses, positive or negative, to all the initiatives is something that helps us grow. So learning through that, and learning through people's responses to our initiatives is something that's already very rewarding, even if it doesn't come precisely with numbers
Yeah,
or yeah, donation.
that's good. How does somebody know they'd be a good fit as a fundraiser? So imagine I'm 22, just graduate university, maybe I want to be a fundraiser. How do I know I'll be a good fundraiser? What qualities should I look for in myself?
Yeah, being results oriented is good. Like if you like numbers and you like reaching for specific goals, that's a good. I think that's a good indicator that you have something necessary for to be a fundraiser. You have to be resilient because fundraising is not always easy, and you have to get some no's, and you can take them personally. Sometimes a negative response from a donor or from an individual, from a foundation, it's not about you, not a comment on your work or the quality of results that your organization is bringing, but it's more a matter of priority for that donor at the moment of their own financial situation, or many reasons can come to a no, and you can like think of them as being personal. So you have to be prepared and grow like somehow a thick skin to deal with that. If you are talkative and you learn fast, that's a good thing too. If you are willing to talk to people and you're excited about the work that you do and about sharing what is important to you, that's a good indicator too. Because you need it. It's
Do you
a
think it
very
helps to be extroverted or just enthusiastic? Enthusiasm is good.
uh, we like to kid around a little, Carol and I, Carolina, our executive director, because she's more of an introvert, I'm more extrovert, and we have like this dual dynamic that works pretty well. She's been doing this work like, way before I joined the organization, and she does amazingly. And I don't think it's necessary for you to be an extrovert, but yeah, you have to know how to handle conversations with people. It doesn't need to be like you don't have to speak for like a big crowd every time, but the conversations, one-on-one conversations or with small groups, they also can bring very good results.
Yeah. And just about two more questions. So one, daily life as a fundraiser. What's that like as a nonprofit fundraiser? Is it writing people all day, writing potential donors, or talking to people, or going to fundraising events or planning them? Walk me through the daily life of a nonprofit fundraiser.
Can I share about my routine? I don't know if that's the
Yeah,
reality
that's
for
great.
all fundraisers. I know there will be some similarities and some things that are done differently. In Synergia, as a development director, I'm responsible for donations in general, so fundraising among big institutions, big funders, but also small individuals that donate to our organization. But we are also responsible in the development department for all the movement building work. So growing our communities of volunteers and supporters in all the countries where we work. So I oversee that part of the work too. And we have a fellowship work where we bring organizations that are starting similar work as ours in the countries where we operate. And we share resources, we share our learnings and findings through the years so they can thrive without having to go through the difficulties that we had. And that's also under the responsibility of the development department. So we ought to do. We keep like a close look into the calendar that we have for reports and applications. So there are those donors with whom we have already built a relationship. They have been supporting our work for a while. So each of them might require different responses from us through the time that they are funding us. So they might want a quarterly conversation to get to know how the work they're funding is going, or they might require a written report once a year, once every semester, once every 2 years, depends on the foundation. So we have to be prepared for that. We prepare at least bi-yearly reports on our overall progress. So in the middle of the year, we update our results and share that with donors so that that information goes to our individual donors and to the foundations. And now we are working in the end of the year reports too. It is a longer one with all the results that we got through the year in all departments. So we work on reports a lot too. The communication, especially in newsletters, through the days. So our supporters, if they agree with that, they get weekly updates on the most exciting things that we've done in that process in all countries. So that's also something that we keep updated. And yeah, I think that's the part that keeps us the most busy, like
Mm.
organizing, keeping constant communication with our supporters.
So if you have 5 days a week as a fundraiser, maybe you spend, help me out here, maybe you spend 1 day a week writing newsletters, 1 day a week on internal communications and strategy and admin, maybe 1 day a week talking to donors or answering emails, and then maybe like 2 days a week for everything else, like maybe going to conferences, maybe um, yeah, I'm not quite sure what else that would be, but is that more or less the right breakup, or how would you adjust that time breakup?
It's a little more fluid than that. As I told you, one very important part of the work of a fundraiser is to stay informed about the developments of the organization, how things are going. So I have meetings, regular meetings with the managing directors in the countries to get to know the work and how that's going, especially focused on our movement building work. But that's how I get to know a little more about the achievements and the overall work that the organization is doing. So we have to have that regularly. I have conversations with people and check-ins with the people in our team. I have someone responsible for some more of the technical part and the written part of the. How can I put this better? I have someone responsible for the work with individual donors. That's the person that's responsible for our digital marketing strategies and working with Facebook. That person is very busy with writing the newsletters, but also keeping communication about donors. Sometimes they reach out with questions and other information that they want. Some of them want to know what's the most effective way to donate, how can they get tax deduction, or how they can reach out to us in some way. We are there to inform them, but this is all held by someone in the team. So that's one activity that we have. Yeah, keeping things organized. So keeping track of any amounts that come. We use tools like Stripe. We use DonorBox to keep track of the donations that are coming. So sending personal thank you notes to some donors. We do that. Reaching out to donors that have questions about the work, especially when you get like a bigger donation from someone that we didn't have a connection before. We reach out to them and we offer for them to talk to me or sometimes to talk to Carolina to get to know more about the organization. We keep track of people who cancel donations or who move their donations into one-time donations instead of being monthly donors. So you always try to reach out to these people to understand what might have happened and if we can talk to the person to clarify anything. So that's also something that's important. This is something that maybe you remember from your sales time, and it's something that comes from my corporate time too. Like keeping a client that you already have is cheaper and
Yes.
easier than
Then finding new
acquiring
ones.
a new one. Yeah.
Yes.
So we value a lot having a good relationship with our donors, the big foundations and
And that's
the
primarily
individual
your
donors
job
too.
is to stay in touch with those past donors.
Yeah, through I have the support of someone in my team that is
So how do
Lily.
you?
I think you met
Yeah,
her.
I mean, and these donors are all over the world. So is it like you keep them updated with these newsletters, you keep them informed, you offer to have a call with them once or twice a year, um, and that's enough. Like it seems like there's a formula, there's some magic to it, but it's also you also don't want to be too overly calculated. But I imagine even that goes a long way in just receiving a personal message, even just once a year, right? Instead of just some like anonymized, mass marketed thank you message, like a personal note from someone at the organization would mean a lot.
It does. I personally sign most of our fundraising emails when the call to action is donate. We try to make them specific, so we share specific projects that we have and things that we want, or in the monthly campaign that we have, the monthly newsletter for fundraising, we share the biggest results and say like, this is how much we have achieved through your support. So if you can donate again, or if this is the first time, donate for this specific project that we are running. We are very excited about this work because ever since we started doing this more diligently and with more structure, we got our numbers to raise 160% the number of
Wow.
individual donations coming. Yeah. I said that it's the first time that we are measuring this and we have like specific KPIs to keep track of that. I think this is also a response from our donors that they appreciate being on the loop about things that are happening. And we always think of ways for people to know how important they are. Being our activists, like coming to our communities to work with us and to do activism, being our supporters, our financial supporters, our donors. We couldn't do the things that we do without the support of people, and we want to raise that very, very much more. So, knowing that we can reach to people and let them know how important they are to their organization is something that's very, it's in the top of our priorities. And it seems to be working very well.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. So, final question, and this has two parts. Sorry. So, first is how does somebody get into fundraising? You were working in the private sector before you were recruited or applied and got this role. But if someone wants to be a nonprofit fundraiser, how do they get started?
Volunteering is a great way to start. If you don't have any positions in mind, volunteering to do some work in fundraising or to participate in any activities, the organization that you admire or any organization that you like. It's something good for you to get to know the movement better if you're not in the movement yet. So getting to know the priorities and the way things work and getting to know about the programs is a good start, but also keeping track of all the positions that are open. So if you're already in the movement, the past list is a good source of information. There are others that's Hive. Hive is another one. They have this very good connection program on Slack, and people can connect to know about those. So knowing about the positions and applying for them. And this is something that we reinforce a lot in our positions. We prioritize hiring from our countries. Most of our team is in our country, but knowing about the positions and applying for them, even if you're not completely according to the requirements for that position. So have the courage to go there and try to have a talk to someone. Many times I have been maybe a little on the fence about someone who applied for a position, but in the conversation it was like, okay, this is a perfect person for this. And many organizations are willing to take people who maybe don't have the precise background, or it's not like a fundraiser, very experienced fundraiser. I wasn't. I had like other skills, and yeah, our people and operations department and our executive director saw the potential talent that I had, and that has been developed. So many organizations are willing to share
Right. So
resources and to
you don't
prepare
need
you.
you don't need a fundraising background to start in fundraising. Just general, like the general skills you had in business, in organization, in being able to talk to people, being enthusiastic, being trusted by the director. That got you
Yeah,
to a top fundraising position.
yeah. There are many. To what I know, there are many like very experienced fundraisers around in the market. In many organizations I've talked, many other fundraisers I've talked to, they had like the first or the second experience in fundraising, and they are doing amazing work. So you have to be willing to learn. If you are a fast learner, that helps. But if you think that you have the skills, the soft skills that will make you a good fundraiser, you shouldn't be discouraged to participate just because that would be your first experience doing that. If you find the right fit, the right organization that's willing to develop you, you might thrive in that position.
Great. And just final question: if someone's a nonprofit fundraiser, what can they do mid or late career? Do they just do more fundraising at a higher level, raise more money, or for bigger and better organizations, or do they get promoted to other positions in the organization, maybe some other kind of executive position, um, or partners director, or yeah, what's sort of the end game for a lot of fundraisers, or do they continue doing more of the same?
I think all the options that you shared are valuable, and that will depend on the organization where you are in your personal goals. So I think being in the development position, being a fundraiser, you have somehow some advantage because you get to know so much about the movement and you get to learn and to talk to so many people that are willing to support your work or willing to listen to you, and you learn a lot through that. So the connections you make are going to make you a more interesting professional. And learning more about the work you do, learning more about the organization where you work, will show that you are prepared to take other challenges, and you'll be someone that I think that makes you a good fit for higher positions in your organization too, because you get to be an expert on the kind of work you do, and knowing that the organization can be very strategic for you to apply for other positions if that suits you.
Carolina, thanks so much for coming on. Any other final words you'd like to share, whether about Synergia Animal or about fundraising careers?
Thank you for having me. This has been amazing. I think talking a little more about how much the compassion that we share for animals can connect with our Christ compassion that we try to raise in us was a very, very unique and very special opportunity for me personally. But yeah, I'd like to address those who are listening to us, and thank you too for caring about animals and caring enough to hear so far about our organization. If you are willing to learn a little more about Synergia or much more, if you want to discuss and to talk, we are always open to talk about the work and the kind of uh, programs that we are holding. And yeah, please reach out and check our social media, our website to learn more. Stay tuned. We are about to release our end of the year support or our end of the year report, and that's going to bring our results together, and you can learn a little more of the impact that we have in 2024, that we have in 2024.
All right. And listeners, if you enjoyed this, you can read more about Sinergia Animal. The links we're putting in the podcast description. You can also check out our fundraising report on the Christians for Impact website with some guides for how to pursue a high impact career as a fundraiser. And we'll have some of the tips that Caroline mentioned there. Caroline, thanks so much sorry, Carolina, thanks so much for being with us, and hope you'll join us again in some future event or episode.
Thank you, JD. It was a pleasure.